I'm Dr. Rick Duplantis, and you're watching It's Your Health. We'll talk about the generic drug scandal tonight, which is, has everyone up in arms. When we go to fill a prescription at the pharmacy, we're all shocked at the price of, brand name drugs, but we are as much shocked at the price of generic drugs, which are starting to rise quite a bit. I've got a few notes on this topic on the generic drug scandal here in our country on an article in the New England Journal of Medicine, and I will quote some of these remarks made in this journal at this time. The penalty for exposing healthcare corruption is endless governmental investigations aimed at destroying, various organizations. The tide may be turning. The New England Journal of Medicine published a report that uncovered a drug price scandal. CBS News turned this consumer swindle into a headline report that graphically depicted the devastating impact that skyrocketing generic drug prices are having. Many people are in protest of this generic drug scandal. 2 months later, then, after this New England Journal of Medicine report, 60 Minutes featured an in-depth report on today's broken sick care system. A quote from the 60-minute broadcast relating to the Affordable Care Act stated that it is the product of an orgy of lobbying and backroom deals in which about everyone with a stake in the $3 trillion a year health industry came out ahead except the taxpayers. The 60-minute report went on to state there is no way in the world that we're going to be able to pay for it. These investigative journalists have since corroborated how high-priced drugs are causing the American consumer to become serfs of the pharmaceutical industry. New England Journal of Medicine exposes this price scandal, and you read stories about the municipal, corporate, and personal bankruptcies. The high cost of health care is a consistent underlying factor in these bankruptcies. Misguided politicians believe that government subsidies, mandates, and giveaways can resolve high sick care costs. Even a cursory glance at the extravagant prices of new medications exposes the falsity of this charade. When a single new drug can cost $100,000, and protocols are being developed that combine several drugs priced in this range, how can any form of cost sharing be expected to work in the pharmaceutical industry? It has become mathematically impossible for these outlandish sick care costs become affordable via a government edict. For example, a bottle of the prescription drug Valcite, contains 60 tablets. The price of the bottle for Valcite is around $4,200. That works out to approximately $70 per tablet. And there are many drugs ranging from $45 to $70 per pill. I think this is outlandish. How can someone who needs a medication ongoing for over a year embrace this price and be able to afford their treatment and their medication? Cost for a 4-month course of this medication is over $16,000. Some people are spending over $50,000 a year for this drug, Valcite, just to stay alive. And this is often one of the many medications they needed. There's simple solutions to the problem. Let me enlighten you to the scam, the growing scam of this prescription generic drug arena. Doxycycline antibiotic costs 6.3 cents. Now it's up to $3.36. The drug Captopril, 1.4 cents. It's now up to 39.9 cents per pill. That's a 2,850% increase. Antidepressants went from 22 cents a pill to $8.32 a pill. This is a 3,780% markup. The magnitude of this fraud, price gouging on a growing number of generic drugs has grown beyond verbal description. These kinds of prices increases are not unique. They reflect a growing swath of generic drugs that cost virtually nothing to manufacture, but they are spiking to the stratospheric consumer prices. These prices are going off the charts. The New England Journal of Medicine gave an example of a generic drug, albendazole, that costs less than $1 per daily dose overseas. But this same drug has risen to $119 per typical daily dose in the United States, amounting to $3,570 per month. This is a 2,000% increase from what this generic drug cost in 2010. Medicaid spending on this one drug alone, albendazole, spiked from $100,000 in 2008 to $7.5 million in 2013. You know, how can we afford these prices? You know, we're all being defrauded in this type of situation, whether or not you need a generic drug whose price has exponentially increased. You are paying through higher health insurance premiums, higher deductibles, and higher copays, as well as limitations on what physicians you may use and what services that doctor may perform. A generic drug used to be called tretinoin, cost $1,000 per month. Health insurance may cover $850. You have to pick up a balance personally of $250 per month. You know, this drug was approved in 1995, and long ago cost the patient protection cost probably $13,000 a year. But people were paying extortionate prices via their insurance premiums, along with many exclusions that caused people to pay out of pocket for what health insurance used to cover on these same drugs. What may shock you most is what the active ingredient in this drug costs. Consumers are paying $1,100 for this bottle of tretinoin, yet the active ingredient for the entire bottle costs a mere 80 cents. Even including encapsulation and quality control, that's a markup of about 400 times over the cost to make this off-patent drug. You know, we are in a catastrophic situation with the price of pharmaceuticals rising each and every day. You know, it was reported in September that, you know, conclusions amongst drug makers is causing generics to be priced beyond rational affordability. They cover the headline, How to Turn 8 Pennies into $600. This is based on an article where antiviral cream acyclovir that long ago lost patient protection or patent protection was being sold to pharmacies for 7,500% increase over the active ingredient cost. This is preposterous. The active ingredient of acyclovir costs about 8 pennies. Yet pharmacies are paying a generic marker of $600 for the drug and selling it to consumers for around $700. Now, the media has just started reporting on the magnitude of generic drug price gouging. You need to look into the literature, stay abreast of what's taking place with this type of situation in our country. These kinds of price markups are unsustainable. They are part of the reason why healthcare has become unaffordable, whether or not you have so-called insurance. An increasing number of experts are coming to this realization, including editors of the New England Journal of Medicine and other publications. We are all being defrauded by this unconscionable price gouging made possible by overregulation of prescription drugs. You know, politicians are clueless regarding this issue. There has been more criticism leveled against the Affordable Care Act than perhaps any other piece of enacted legislation in our country. Soundbite speaking political candidates constantly state that if elected, they will abolish it. The problem is nonetheless that many have a faintest clue of what to replace it with. The reason they can't even pretend to have a solution is that none understands what's behind the health care cost crisis. Do you think that politicians today know that there's a generic drug being sold for over $1,000 a month whose active ingredient only costs 80 cents? These politicians don't know this, and it's hard to expect that they would. You know, it's up to the citizenry to enlighten Congress and demand that the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act be amended so that free market forces can quickly resolve the generic price gouging scandal. You know, free market solution, well, the solution is to the problem of rip-off drug pricing is to amend the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act to allow more competition in the generic marketplace. If enacted, generic prices will plummet to levels so low you wouldn't even worry about what percentage of your insurance company pays. When generic drug prices drop this much, it will push down many patented pharmaceutical prices because generic substitutes often work as well as newer branded drugs. Against us are the pharmaceutical lobbyists, those who line their pockets with money from pharmaceutical industries, who will do virtually anything to protect their lucrative monopoly against the free market competition. And these individuals are paid $750,000 to $1 million a year in salary to be lobbyists for the pharmaceutical companies. On our side are 330 million American consumers, most of whom cannot afford to fall ill, even if they have health insurance. That's because the deductibles, the copays, and exclusions result in an enormous out-of-pocket expenses that are today's leading cause of personal bankruptcies. You cannot afford to be ill. My question is, how many of you want to take political action to stop this price gouging? You must write your congressman, you must write your political people, and tell them that you want something done regarding this. There was a newspaper article, an ad in October 11, 1991. There were a handcuff standing before a federal judge of FDA insisting that there be denied bond that represented a danger to the public for informing Americans that lower priced medications could be attained almost anywhere else in the world. People are reaching out to foreign countries for their health care needs. They're reaching out to these foreign countries for pharmaceutical agents because they cannot afford the prices that these drugs cost in the United States. Cheaper drugs can be had from our neighboring country, Canada, and other countries, especially India. Fortunately, an avalanche of letters from many supporters, to the judges and politicians could help in this situation. Americans today routinely obtain lower priced medications from Canada because they just can't access offshore pharmacies via the internet at times. But when they can, they do. They access these pharmacies through the internet in these foreign countries, and this is how they're able to take their medication. This was not the case in the 1980s and 90s. Back then, the FDA fought anyone who dared to inform Americans that they could purchase less expensive medications through foreign countries, including Canada. Legislation is urgently needed. Fighting the FDA on a personal use importations of medications was only one battle that's been spearheaded. Others dealt with the FDA's attempt to turn many dietary supplements into prescription drugs, making these dietary supplements unaffordable to the average individual. When initiated to combat the FDA's attempts to ban dietary supplements, a huge percentage of supporters rallied to stop this from occurring. The result was the passage of the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act of 1994 that protected vitamin supplementation